Everybody doing? Y'all doing all right? Have a good couple of days? Excellent. Good. I'm glad to hear it. So we're going to continue with Inkscape, and I can hear some of you rolling your eyes right now, I'm sure. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to do something a little bit different. I know you guys went over parametric design on Monday, and you went over all of the different ways that you can create sort of specced out designs for laser cutting and stuff like that. And that is actually going to be immensely useful for laser cutting, as I'm sure Mr. Dubik already impressed upon you. But yeah, during lab and stuff like that, when you're designing things to be laser cut, and we might actually go over that later on today, just some of example projects and stuff like that. You will definitely need to take advantage of parametric design. Parametric design is just basically a fancy word for you know the word parameters, right? Sort of like the conditions in which something needs to exist by. Well, parametric is just the quality of having parameters, I guess. That's sort of the best way to put it. But parametric design is designed by using parameters. It needs to be an inch long and a quarter of an inch thick, and it needs to be exactly midway on all of these, and all of them need to be this way. So that's sort of what that means by that. That it's just a fancy name for designing something to spec. Nice. Um, but that's all well and good. Parametric design is very useful, but you guys, near as I can tell, went over. Hey, Natalia, went over all of the basics of parametric design. At this point, if I were to go over something, I feel like I'd just be repeating myself. So what we're going to do is we're going to do something a little bit different, also with Inkscape. Some of you, like, let's see here. I think, well, a couple of names here might remember this from last semester slash last year. But we're going to do, instead of parametric design, taking a raster image and turning it into a vector image, like this shaky duck. Bum, bum, bum. But yeah, so that's what we're going to do. Yeah, I know. Um, I'll try and keep it as painless as possible, especially if you've seen this process before, especially if you've done this before. So, at least you'll know how to do it, but you won't be beat over the head with it yet again. But this is our goal, is we're going to take a raster image and turn it into a vector image so that we can do all sorts of sweet vectory stuff with it, like use it for laser cutting, use it for 3D printing, use it for making into a billboard, use it for making into a little tiny, tiny, tiny thing, use it for, just strangely creating strange mathematical expressions. I don't know, the possibilities are endless, but that's what we're going to work on today. Very different from parametric design. I will say that much. So it's still Inkscape, but we're definitely going to shift gears with what we're covering as far as Inkscape is concerned. Because, like I said, I mean, you guys went over parametric design. You more or less have the idea behind how it works. And the thing is, you'll get parameters when it comes to designing something for laser cutting. And all you got to do is just follow those parameters. If you know how to do parametric design, you can design something parametrically in lab. I realize I've just said the same thing like 3 times in a row in 3 different ways, but really you got it. And if you don't got it, I mean, the video pretty much covers everything, so you can go over it again, like cloning and duplicating and copy paste and all that kind of stuff. So the difference between all of those. So yeah, so today is going to be raster to vector, and it'll probably take most, if not all, of the class. Um, if it doesn't, we'll spend some time going over the rest of this presentation, and then we'll break for the weekend. And You know, the sky is the limit as far as what Monday's going to look like. It's the nice thing about this is whatever we're covering, it's always a surprise. We try and keep the suspense at a maximum. So, why would you ever want to convert a raster image to a vector image? Why would you ever not just work with a vector image? I mean, what's the point of dealing with a raster image and going through this whole conversion process and if you could just download a vector image from Google? And in case you're curious, you totally can. So just to prove a point, we're going to lurk. We're going to look for a vector image. That's what happens when I try and do 3 or 4 words at the same time. Well, give me an animal. This example has a duck. We can do a duck if you guys want, but we could do something totally different as well. Okay, we got 1 vote for dog. A vote for lion. A vote for potato. Not technically an animal, although that would be enjoyable. Cat, a tiger, or 2 tanks. All right. A second tiger. Another vote for cat. So far, cat's in the lead. Oh. You meant a tiger 2 tank. Okay. I thought you wanted a tiger, or failing that, 2 tanks. I'm tracking now. Okay. Hey, don't you facepalm me. Not many people put an entire tab space between one part of the word and the second part of the word, so that tends to confuse people. All right, we're going for cat. Cat is the clear winner in the scenario. Well, you know, readability mostly, Liam. All right, so let's go to the Google, and we'll just type in cat. Cat. And we'll go to images. Here we got a whole bunch of pictures of cats, and these are all raster images of cats. But we can go to settings and advanced search and check it out. File type. We can pick our own file type. Now, all vector images, every single one of them in an editable form, is going to be in an SVG format. That is I think it's scalable vector graphics format. You can export an SVG file into like PNG or GIF or GIF, depending upon what side of that debate you're on, or JPEG or whatever, bitmap. Problem is, those are all raster image formats. So as soon as you export it to like a PNG or something like that, you lose that ability to scale. You lose that sort of the ability to make it ginormous and still crisp and sharp and everything like that vector images have, because then you're taking, essentially you can imagine it like you have your vector image on your desktop, and then you take a screenshot of it and then save the screenshot. That's kind of the thing that's going on in that case. So what we're going to do is we're going to search for a pure vector image file, which is going to be an SVG file, and let's hit advanced search. And as you can see, this is much less impressive. They're all cats, that's for sure. Some are pretty adorable. Some are pretty horrifying. Some of them, they tried. But this is not really as detailed or as artistically inclined as a regular raster image of a cat. So that's what we're going to do, is we're going to try and get the best of both worlds by having a vector image that is a copy of a raster image. Because look at the amount of detail that exists on these raster images. It's pretty ridiculous. So let's see here. I'm going to pick a cat. I kind of want to pick that cat with the banana, but you want something that's a little bit less detailed. Like maybe it's got like a white background. That would be nice. Um, these pictures are a little bit too busy. But like, for instance, let's search for an orange cat, because I have an orange cat. And also it'll be sort of like a good display of that actually looks a decent amount like my cat, just with slightly shorter fur. But we'll go with a short hair cat. We'll go with this cat. So one of the other things you want to make sure of is no. Do a raster image. SVG is going to be a vector image, so just do anything else, just not SVG. um, so we're going to go with this image. One of the things you want to make sure of whenever you're picking an image for a project that you're working on is you pick an image that's in the public domain. If it's a personal thing, or if you're just sharing something with your friends or something like that, obviously don't worry about it too much. If you download a picture and it happens to have a copyright on it, but like you're just sitting there going like, hey, look at this funny picture. I'm gonna share it to like 2 friends and that's it. Then that's okay. But if you plan on using this for a larger project, make sure you either have ownership rights to it or it's in the public domain because things get you're not really going to run into the issue a whole lot, but things start to get murky when it's somebody else's picture and you're trying to use it for your own project, and maybe it's something that is going to be more widely distributed, or maybe in a worse case, it's something that you're hoping to make money on. Then you definitely want to make sure that you're using something in the public domain or something that you own. And when I say something that you own, you can use something that somebody else made, but you want to get in contact with them and get permission. You want to say, hey, so I want to use your picture of a cat for my project. Um, can I do that? And they might go, yeah, sure, whatever. Or they might go, yeah, if you're gonna make money on it though, give me $200 or give me something. All right, let's see this picture of a cat. This is a cat, right? I'm not just blindly copy pasting. Ah, yes, grumpy cat. Very nice. Man, this is a thing that I haven't seen in a while. All right. So yeah, definitely if it's something that's owned by somebody else and you want to use it for a project that's a little bit more than just something small and personal, you want to get in contact with them. But anyway, let me go ahead and download my picture of cat. An orange cat isolated on a white background PV. Well, all right, that's a very descriptive picture name. So that'll work. Let me just go ahead and get Inkscape open. And that'll just take a minute while that's getting all started up. And with the normal disclaimers of if it doesn't start up and like immediately, don't worry, don't freak out. It's probably just Inkscape being slow because it's a very high load on your memory and CPU and hard drive initially when it first opens up. So now we've got our Inkscape canvas. That's the word I was looking for. I kept wanting to say palette. That's absolutely not what this is. It's what this is, but it's not what this is. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to import something. In fact, I'm going to import my raster image. No surprises there, right? So let's go into a little import window. All right. Orange cat isolated on a white background. Open. and you're going to get this little dialog box here. JPEG bitmap image import. You've got an image import type, which is either embed or link. Embed simply means it's going to take a copy of the picture and all of its information, and it's going to store it in this file, this SVG file that we're creating, and then eventually the one that we export. Link means that we're going to take the information about the picture, we're going to keep it in the same spot, and what we're going to do here is we're going to ask Inkscape to basically make a reference to it. It's going to say, hey, if you want to find any information about the picture, you can find it here. So it's not making a copy of anything. It's just talking about where to find the pictures so that the computer can, work with it. So embedding can work just fine for our purposes. So we're going to keep it at embed. Image DPI is basically how much detail is going to be in the image. So DPI from file is going to be whatever detail the image has is going to be the detail that is used in our import versus default import resolution, which can either be higher or lower than the image that we're importing. So, if you want to make sure that you don't lose any information, you can always just do from file. If you're not really that worried about it, you can always do default import resolution. You might have the same resolution by using default import resolution for the reasons that I listed. And then image rendering mode, we've got none, in parentheses auto, smooth, in parentheses optimize quality, and blocky, in parentheses optimize speed. So basically this is just how the computer is going to render the image to your eyeballs as it's sitting here in this Inkscape document. Auto it's just going to take its best guess. Smooth is going to work as hard as it can to make sure that this image is as pretty as possible to your eyeballs as you're looking at it here in Inkscape. And blocky is going to give the graphics card on your computer a rest, or the integrated graphics, whatever you have, is going to give that a rest and just render it as quickly as possible, which means that you're going to lose some quality, but that's just while you're working on it. After you export it, you can still have, an appreciable amount of quality. So we're going to keep all of these on the default, embed, from file, and none. Hit OK, and here's our cat. Look at that cat. Look at him doing cat things, just freaking out like cats do, at least like my cat does. All right, where did my canvas go? Oh, wow, it went far away. All right, I'm bringing my cat back over to my canvas. So here's our orange cat. Remember, our orange cat is a raster image, so if I zoom way in, like if I zoom into his eyeball here, look at how blown out it is. Like there's this smudginess between the pupil and the iris, and everything looks all weird and stuff. But if we zoom out, it starts to look nice and crisp again. Once again, a function of a raster image, because it's basically a grid of colors. And as we zoom into the picture, all we can really do is make that grid larger. The individual squares on that grid are just going to get larger, which means that everything starts to look all blurry and smudgy the more we zoom in, because our eyes do a lot of the work sort of filling in the blanks as those grids get smaller. It's sort of like if you watch a slideshow and it's like let's say 3 frames per second, and it feels like a slideshow. But if you're watching a slideshow that's at 30 to 60 to 90 to 120 frames per second, suddenly it feels like you're watching a movie. Your mind fills in the blanks of all the motion and everything like that, and it looks like full smooth motion. So the more we zoom out, the sharper, albeit smaller, the image of the cat looks. The more we zoom in, blurry it looks. I think we got that idea. So let's go ahead and let's turn this into a vector image. So I'm going to right-click on this thing. Actually, first I'm going to left-click on it so it's selected. Make sure you got the arrows and the dotted line around it. Then I'm going to right-click on this thing. It gives us a different set of options if we do that. That's the reason why I say that we should. So we've got a whole bunch of options here. We're going to ignore all of them except for the one that's labeled Trace Bitmap. If you don't have that option there, because for some people, sometimes, even though it is a raster image, they don't have that Trace Bitmap option. So you can go up here to Path, and Trace Bitmap should be up here. If it's grayed out, you got to make sure of 2 things. One, you got to make sure that you have a raster image, as opposed to a vector image. And two, you have to make sure that it's selected so it has the dotted line around it. If you don't do either of those two things, or if you skip either of those two things, you won't be able to trace a bitmap because A, either it won't be a bitmap, or B, it won't know what to trace. So we're going to trace bitmap, finally. This is actually the thing that does the thing. So we got a bunch of options here. I'm going to walk through these as well. So you got some tabs, mode, options, suppress speckles, smooth corners, optimize paths. Those are things that just sort of provide a little bit more information about what we're actually tracing. We're going to ignore these for now, but we'll revisit these in a minute. Credits, pretty self-explanatory. Guy who made it. And then here's where the magic happens. Single scan and multiple scans. So when we're tracing a bitmap, what's happening is Inkscape is scanning the picture. It is running through all of the pixels on the picture, essentially, and drawing a map based on that. Then it's going to overlay a vector image. So it's going to figure out how it can express these different colored regions with vector equations, and then it's going to basically do its best guess. And it does a pretty good job of it when we get to, a certain point of detail and density. However, it's going to look pretty unimpressive at first. And that's because if you guys remember back to very early on when Mr. Dybbuk was just introducing Inkscape to you guys and the differences between raster images and vector images, one of the advantages of raster images is that it has the ability to convey complex images with relatively less information required. Because again, it's a grid of pixels that are just simply colors, and our mind fills in the blanks. With a vector image, at some points, if you want to express complex shapes, especially colors overlaid and stuff like that, like for instance, a picture of a cat, it's going to be too mathematically complex to represent it with simply one line. So for that reason, single scan stuff is going to look a little underwhelming. But let's run through the options anyway. So brightness cutoff, it's going to basically find the light points versus the dark points. And after a certain lightness threshold, I guess, a certain darkness threshold, it is going to assume that that is not a part of the drawing. So it's basically going to draw, if we hit update here, the dark parts of the cat. We can up the threshold and hit update again. And as you can see, a lot more of the cat gets rendered because we increase the threshold. Basically, the lighter the image, the more it is considered a part of the image. And in fact, rather than clicking update each time, all right, well, as long as you know what we're doing here, rather than clicking update each time, I'm just going to click this little live preview checkbox. And now every time I update it, it will give me an updated preview of what the final image is going to look like. But see, this is not that great. Like, it's not amazing. I'm not really that proud of it. It's not providing what we need. It's a nice stylized picture of a cat, but there's a lot of missing stuff from the picture. So let's check out edge detection. Basically, this is going to look in big differences in color and just draw lines where those are, as opposed to filling in the middle like brightness cutoff has. Edge detection is simply going to be the edges of things. So I can turn up the threshold on edge detection, and it actually makes the cat go away more, but I can turn it down and increase the detail in the picture. And as you can see, things are sort of starting to come into shape. I'll just keep, oop, that's a little bit too far. But again, not really as useful as we'd like. Now, color quantization is interesting. It's going to basically take 8 separate colors that exist in this picture, and it's going to determine them to be parts of the image. It's going to be like the 8 most common colors in the image, and it's going to determine them to be part of the image. And then you get a nice black and white rendering based on that. Then you can invert the image if you wanted to, and then it looks like a sweet bit of pop art or something like that. So these are all single scans. Now I see you're talking about the lag, caveman. Perfect segue into multiple scans. So multiple scans based on the name, if we're just going to take a guess here, single scan creates a single scan. Multiple scans does multiple scans. It runs over the picture multiple times. The advantage of this is it creates multiple shapes, which means that we can have an increased amount of detail in our final product. So let's take a look at it. So brightness steps. Brightness steps is going to be changes in brightness, and it's going to go through multiple different changes in brightness and sort of draw a picture based on that. So I'm going to hit that one. Immediately, not really that impressive. How about grays? Grays is going to, well, okay, so colors and grays. It's going to trace the image based on a set number of colors, in this case 8, and then create a colored image based on that. Grayscale one, grays, is going to do the same thing, except it's going to convert it all to gray. Now, why did I say 8 colors? That's because that's how many scans we have set here. In multiple scans, you can control how detailed your picture is by increasing the number of scans. So I'm going to select grays, and here's our grayscale kitty cat. Look at that, it actually looks really nice. Now, granted, it looks really nice in this tiny picture. It's going to look a lot less nice as we get it blown up in size. Colors, as you can see, a lot of the color is lost from the cat. Since it's only using 8 colors, this is well, yeah, it's an 8-bit rendition of a cat, I guess. No, it's not even really, because 8 colors is fewer than 8 bits. 8 bits you can have, well, let's see here, a whole bunch of colors. I forget. I can't do math off the top of my head. But anyway, whatever 2 to the power of the 8 is. 2 to the power of 8 minus, no. Yeah, I know. It's really encouraging, right? You're sitting here going, oh God, what did I get myself into? This guy can't do math. But here I am, telling you how to use Inkscape. So anyway, 8 colors. We can increase the number of scans. We're also going to increase the detail of this picture. The cat's going to have more colors. He's going to have more detail. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit OK right now just to execute the trace. It won't look like anything happened for a moment because the stop button will become active, the OK button will become inactive, and then after a fashion, the stop button will again become inactive, and the OK button will become active again. That's because this window doesn't disappear when you hit OK. That way you can execute multiple traces. You can do a scan, and if you don't like it, you still have the window open, so you can go back and do another scan that's better fitting. But I'm going to go ahead and hit OK here. And as you can see, yeah, it's very clearly not as well done. Now I can uncheck smooth and hit OK. Not really going to do much. If I smooth corners, hit OK, it's a little bit better. Try an unoptimized paths, hit OK. Yeah, it's a little bit better. But still, this is not ideal. And in fact, I'm going to go through and delete all of these. Actually, let's hit this again, see what happens. Yeah, see, it gets a little bit better, but it looks a little bit more stylized. So I'm going to increase the number of scans. Now, this can go up to, I think, 100 scans. But don't go to 100 scans and then run it. Oh, 256? Okay. Yeah, don't do 256. 100 is pushing it too. If you have a really beefy workhorse computer, you can do it, but just be prepared to walk away from your computer for 10 minutes. You know, go make yourself a sandwich and have a glass of water and then pet your real cat and then, you know, fire up the Xbox and play around to something and come back and have it be done. The thing is, it gets ridiculously computationally expensive as you increase the number of scans. Nice. Well, there you go, Liam. So I'm going to increase the number of scans to 20. And we're already going to see a dramatic increase in not only detail on the cat. You can watch the preview and see that the cat gets a lot more detail. That's opening my web browser. Yeah, the cat not only gets a lot more detail, but if we hit OK, watch how long it stays grayed out. All right, not too bad. Now let's up it to 112. All right. So this was the image of the cat. It turned out pretty well. You can also see my computer has a pretty hard time with moving the image around because it's moving a lot of stacked traces. So yeah, I'm going to move it up to 112 and I'm going to hit OK. All right. You might even hear my voice get a little wonky for a second, just because it takes a fair amount of computing power. But it's sitting here, it's working on it. Hopefully you have enough memory. Hopefully your Inkscape doesn't crash. There, it's done. And it's actually a very nice looking picture of a cat. Now watch what happens when I try and drag it off. I'm currently dragging. Like I said, very, very expensive. But it's a very nice looking cat too. So if you really wanted to, you could have this vector image of a cat. And if we wanted to, we could zoom way in and look at how sharp those edges are. Now, granted, it's not going to look like anything because, again, the way that vector images work is they stack a whole bunch of shapes on top of one another in order to create a more complex shape. But look at this. It's like a stylized picture of a cat. It's kind of neat, right? You could blow this up, put it on a billboard. People could be, stick it on the side of a building. People could be driving by and be like, oh, look, a cat. And they get closer and it's like, oh, look, modern art. Computerized art. But look, the detail in the tail is there. There's even a little shadow there. The cat's got paws. His eyes are the same orange as the rest of his body. But again, a lot of that has to do with the fact that as you increase the number of scans, you're also going to increase the number of colors that Inkscape will work with. As it stands right now, we're using 112 different colors. So, oh, not quite yet. Geez, Cademan, come on, man. Okay. I thought you were asking me if you could leave. Yeah, we're still talking about stuff, though. You never know. You might learn something new. Stick around. Cademan, stick it out. Okay. All right, so yeah, this is our scan of the cat. It's got a whole lot of colors on it. It'd have more colors if we had more scans. But again, believe it or not, this is actually, it's used 112 separate colors on the cat's fur. So there are a whole bunch of different colors that exist on the cat's fur. Anyway, I'm going to give my computer a break and delete it. And I'm going to reduce the number of scans down to like 70. 70 is a good number. Hit OK. It's still going to take a minute, and it's not going to look as pretty, but it'll be much easier on my computer. So now that we've got all of this, I'm going to close this window, and this is going to be our vector cat. As you can see, you zoom out enough, you can't tell. Zoom way in. Well, it looks blurry because it's trying to scan it at a micro level. But by and large, the images are much smoother. And also, you can't do 10. Oh dear. Also, we can do a neat thing with this. So I'm going to delete the raster image behind this, and I'm going to right-click on this cat, and I'm going to select Ungroup, and my computer's going to flip out for a second. Give it a moment to figure its life out, and then I got a whole bunch of dotted lines on this. So what exactly did I do? Well, you remember how I was saying that multiple scans, yeah, I'm sure. Multiple scans is multiple different, basically vector shapes. Well, what we did is we took that whole image of the cat and we broke it up into the individual vector shapes that make up the cat image. So there's a whole bunch of them. In fact, there are 70 of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the white background. There are a couple of them. It does sort of overreact on the white backgrounds. All I'm doing is just deleting white backgrounds. Okay, there we go. So now I've got a cat, but it's broken up into its constituent parts, not in a biology sense, but in an image sense. So what I can do is I can start dragging these off. And now I just removed like a whole bunch of colored bits from the cat. I can do that again. And as you can see, I'm sort of creating these separate parts. Now, so far, not that interesting. But I'm going to keep dragging these off. And hopefully you'll see in a moment that there is a base to this whole image, which you can then use. So keep removing, and as you can see, the cat's gonna change colors as well because all of this stuff is different colors layered on top. And we're starting to get into like the really detailed parts of the cat image. And eventually, we should reach a theoretical bottom point that's going to be like an outline of the cat. Sort of, kind of. But what we can do now is we can layer some of this stuff back on if we were so inclined. Oops, put that back there. That's not the one I wanted. I wanted this one. Then we'll line this stuff back up. Actually, if we can get rid of these and get rid of these, there, now we've got move this forward, move this forward. And we'll take one of these lighter ones. No, not quite light enough. We'll take one of these ones. And we'll lay it over on top. And as you can see, you got kind of like an interesting sort of rendering of the cat. And I think it's kind of cool. We'll put another one underneath in order to even out the colors a little bit. And there you go. So that, now what we can do is we can get rid of all this other stuff. Boom, 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 boom. And then we can take this and we can regroup it. And now we got our cat. And also look, it's a lot fewer scans, so it's a lot easier on the computer. But it may not be a perfect rendition. And we could have kept that higher scan amount for a perfect rendition if we were so inclined. But I think it's an interesting way to render a raster image. And it's one that you'd make your own. Because you can sit here and cover, take layers and put them on top and stuff like that until you've created something that you think looks neat. And now you've done your own rendition on an image. Like that. Wasn't too hard, was it? I'm a kitty cat, not dance, dance, dance. But yeah, so that's vectorizing a raster image. Now, if you wanted to, you could save this to keep it as an SVG. You could export it as a PNG, although arguably that does sort of defeat the purpose of vectorizing a raster image. But you totally could, if actually having it look like this was your end result, and you weren't so concerned about keeping it as a vector image, then by all means, do the thing. Um, but that's just the caveat that I'm going to give it. And yeah, so okay. So now, as far as vector images are concerned, cat. What could we do with those? Well, we can 3D print vector graphics. That's a possibility. We can also laser cut them. But let's take a look at this real quick. So yeah, you can take a vector graphic and you can turn it into an STL file for 3D printing. Nothing crazy, but kind of a neat little project. Um, so obviously you'd need an SVG image in order for this to work. But basically, all it's going to involve is getting your SVG image, getting a single trace, and then bringing your SVG file into Tinkercad. Just import it into Tinkercad, and then you will automatically have a 3D image of your 2D object, or a 3D version, whatever. And then you can download it for 3D printing, send it to your 3D printer, and then you can get a 3D printed version of your duck or your cat or your whatever. There's also the Bezier tool or Bezier tool. I don't know. That's another way to convert a raster image into a vector image simply by tracing um, an outline over a raster image. This is something that people are really interested in the laser cutting world, is laser cutting your own business cards, because you can do things like make a little giraffe that can be constructed out of your business card, or create a really complex sort of little balsa wood um, business card design. Just kind of neato cool. Um, this might be something we do. This is something we did last year. So I can't tell you for certain whether or not we're going to end up doing it, but we're going to hold off on working on it for today. I'll just say that much. And this is how you do it. Neato. Have you not heard neato? It's a fantastic word. Neato is the best word. It's neat. Oh yeah, this is another way to 3D print your. I see you have a problem with neato. I'll be sure to use it as much as possible in the coming lectures, until you have no point when you're describing something to your friends and you just happen to say neato, the word just tumbles out of your mouth, and you realize that that's the point where you've heard it enough in your life that suddenly it's become a part of your vocabulary. And that's when I will have won. Anyway, so 3D printing your vector graphic can also be done through a script on GitHub. You can download the script off of GitHub. You can go over basically the converting it to a CAD design. There's OpenSCAD. GitHub is fantastic. GitHub is amazing. GitHub has been a lifesaver for me. Well, Git has been a lifesaver for me. I haven't actually used a whole lot of GitHub, but Git has certainly been a lifesaver for me, and I am in love with the concept of GitHub. I've just never needed to use it. Had to spend a moment coughing there. You heard a little bit of that in the beginning. So laser cutting your vector graphic. In this particular example, it would be a spirograph. Do spirographs still exist? Because those things were like awesome when I was going through like middle school and elementary school and stuff like that. Mostly elementary school, but I mean they're still pretty cool, but they're neato. But intercontinental missile. Um, well, anyway, if you've never heard of a spirograph before, basically it's a thing that's got like a circle with some teeth on it, like you see here. Yeah, no, no. And then you've got some holes in like the little inner circle, and the inner circle, the teeth on it lock into the teeth on the outer circle. And you basically just stick like a pencil in one of these holes or a pen or something like that, and then you draw like you basically press down and then you start drawing with the pen, and then the way that the circle spins as it goes around the the outer circle will generate these fancy old like spirally designs and stuff like that. Hence spirograph. It's a yeah, it's neato. But yeah, so you would design your gears in this with Inkscape or something like that, and then you can ha 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 ha. And then you can. I like how it's design your gear, finish the spirograph. Yep, that's how that works. Um, Neato apocalypse. Um, but yeah, so you would create the spirograph, and then once you're done, you would export it as a DXF, as you can see here, and then that can be imported into a laser cutter control program, and then you can cut out your spirograph using a laser cutter. Anyway, it's 7:50. So I want to make sure that I have enough time to answer you guys' questions, as always. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to wrap it up here. So I'm going to do the poll questions. Then if you have any questions about anything, you're more than welcome to ask me. Otherwise, you can head out. Have a wonderful weekend. And Mr. Dubik will see you on Monday. And I will see you on Wednesday. But yeah, so let's go ahead and get that started.